That journey of losing an identity that you had been striving for was hard, was really, really hard. And it was spiritually, emotionally, mentally, physically challenging at all levels.
Yeah, I bet.
And at the time, my wife was pregnant with our first child. So you wrap that all and put it all in the blender, it's a real tough smoothie to drink.
Yeah.
And there were some moments of reflection and some people who came in my life who helped me through that process, because now I had to figure out who was I going to be, because the life I thought I had was taken away.
From Fiore Communications, it's How I Got Here, a show of inspiring stories from Tallahassee-area leaders, business owners, and neighbors. All the challenges, opportunities, inspirations, the twists and turns of life that led them to where they are today. Everyone has a story worth telling, and I am really grateful that we get to bring a few of them to you. I truly have been changed by my conversations with these amazing people, and I'm confident you will be too. I'm Dave Fiore, and in this episode, I speak with David Clark, owner of Allegiant Strategies Group and MyGovGuide. The Tallahassee-area native is a former military officer and entrepreneur with a passion for leadership and making the most of every opportunity. David began his career answering phones at the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, saw opportunities to make himself invaluable, and eventually was named Deputy Chief of Staff to Governor Ron DeSantis, which included helping deliver Florida's response to the worldwide pandemic. Raised by a World War II veteran father and a mother from British Guiana, David learned early about the value of hard work, humility, and learning from others. That perspective carried him into the Army, where he graduated at the top of his class and allowed him to choose his assignment to the 82nd Airborne to honor his father. But after a parachute malfunction and traumatic brain injury ended his military service, David transitioned into entrepreneurship. We talk about being coachable, servant leadership, and the importance of mentorship, faith, and most of all, family. The conversation also covers David's decision to start multiple companies, including Allegiant Strategies Group, MyGovGuide, and also Divergent Solutions, all while pursuing concurrent MBA degrees. When it comes to tackling new challenges, David's philosophy is actually pretty simple. He just asks himself, why not? Why not me? And why not now? We started our conversation talking about growing up in nearby Gadsden County.
In order to tell you that, I'm going to give you a little bit of my parents' background, because it will help color a lot of how I was raised, which was a little different than my peer group. My father was 65 years old when I was born.
Wow.
Yes, and my mother was almost 30 years younger than him. So my dad was a World War II veteran. And he had lived, I'll say, many lives before he married my mother as his fifth marriage. My mom was from British Guiana, so they met in South America. And he was older. She was obviously very young. And this is the interesting short story. I asked my dad one time, I said, why? And he said, why not? It's like, she was beautiful and young and exotic. And I said, okay. I asked my mother.
I was going to say, that's another question to ask. Is your mom, right?
Yeah, I asked my mom, and she said, well, he was an American, and I wanted to get to America. But they were married for almost 25 years. Wow. And had two children. My older sister, she's 4 years older than me. She was born in Houston, and they were headed to Jacksonville from Houston. They were driving on I-10, and they stopped in Tallahassee one night as a break before they were headed to Jacksonville the next day. And as the story goes, they heard on the news that night that Jacksonville was having some issues with their water. There was sulfur in the water. And so they said, well, let's stick around in Tallahassee and see if the water issues in Jacksonville sort themselves out. And they never left. And
wow.
So that is why I'm in Tallahassee, Florida.
Because Jacksonville had bad water.
Because Jacksonville had bad water.
And I can tell you they don't have great water now.
Well,
so
it's a good reason they still stayed here, I guess.
They made a good call.
But it's interesting how, inflection points in life can change the trajectory of someone's life, and that was one of those moments. Yeah. So they ended up buying a piece of property in Gadsden County, out by Pat Thomas Law Enforcement Academy at the time, 12 acres, and I was born shortly thereafter, and the rest is history from that perspective. I was born at Tallahassee Memorial Hospital. So most of your life when you live in some of the surrounding counties occurs in Tallahassee.
Sure.
Yeah, and that was very true. But younger years, I went to Gadsden Christian, which then turned into Tallavanna Christian. And then my parents moved me to Maranatha. And then I eventually moved to North Florida Christian for 6th grade. And I went to NFC, played football, played with some of the greats. Ernie Sims was one of them.
Awesome.
Yeah, Ernie was 1 grade older than me. And I will tell you, playing football with a man like Ernie Sims was an incredible experience, very painful at times.
Yeah, quite an athletic family.
Oh,
Sims
my
family.
goodness. Yes,
Yeah.
Marcus was the grade below me.
Yeah.
Ernie was the grade above me. And I played with some other greats, the Root family, Matt and Mark Root, and Hines. Roger Hines was my quarterback at one point. Just some incredible guys. I went on to play college ball. I did not. I did not have the physical prominence in order to be big enough to not get absolutely obliterated on the football field.
What positions did you play?
Outside linebacker, roving strong safety.
All right, so I assume your dad is not with us now.
He's not.
Right? So
No.
how much of it was he there for most of your childhood?
He was. He passed away from cancer. It went from prostate to bone cancer eventually, but he passed away right after I turned 18.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was good I had him for 18 years.
Yeah.
Right? And just an incredible, wise, sage advisor. He's more like a friend than a father because he's much older and much more mellow than some of my half siblings that told me that he was a very different man when he was post-military.
I would expect.
Yeah, World War II timeframe. Because I have half siblings who could almost be my grandparents. It's quite bizarre.
Yeah.
But, the story of our lives. But when you're 18 and you lose your father and you care that much about your father, it does something to you.
Yeah.
And I had to be the rock for my sister and my mom. And I think at that point I had a fiance and all the things, right? And it made me realize 2 very key elements. And one was life is short. Even though he was 83 when he passed, life is short. And the next part was don't waste it. So
that's a lot for an 18-year-old to take on.
It's a
right?
lot. You grow up really fast.
Yeah.
I've been told I was old at heart, kind of an old soul, even when I was younger. But that does something to you as a young man. And it almost put me into hyperdrive. It's hard to explain what it did, but I just poured myself into accelerating every dimension of who I was to learn and to grow and to do better at work. And I was very blessed that a couple of retired and former military guys that worked at the state agency that I was at kind of recognized something in me, and they said, "We like you, kid. We're going to tuck you under our wing, and we're going to mentor you." And that mentorship made such a difference in my life, my career, because not only did they pour into me, they held me accountable. They pushed me. They called me out, and that was so valuable.
Yeah. That's awesome. Mentorship is an incredible asset or an incredible thing to give to someone else and to receive as a younger person.
Yes.
So let's back up a teeny bit. So after you graduated from North Florida Christian, you went to TCC, now TSC.
Yes.
And then you went to Flagler, I assume the Tallahassee branch that was there at on the campus.
Yeah.
So what was that experience like for you?
Awesome. TCC at the time, Tallahassee State College now, just an incredible environment to learn and grow. And the teachers were awesome. The class sizes were amazing compared to some of the bigger institutions.
For sure.
So you would have a lot more one-on-one with your professors. And then, yes, I went to the 4-year program on TCC's campus at Flagler. And at the time, they had a dual program. So you could get an accounting degree and a business degree at the same time.
Okay.
A little heavier workload, but that was awesome because I worked full-time. I was already working for government at a state agency. And so I'd go to school full-time at night and on the weekends.
Okay.
So I got my business and accounting degrees, and I also got a real estate license at the same time because I was working at the Department of Environmental Protection in the state lands arena. And so my college experience was great.
All right. So you mentioned that you work at a state agency at the Department of Environmental Protection.
I did.
Right. How did you get there, and what did you do while you were at that agency?
Yes. So someone recommended that I get into state service. And just backing up a little bit, So out of high school, I was very interested in military service. And there was an opportunity, because I scored well on the ASVAB, to possibly go into an academy. I didn't know anybody. My parents didn't come from wealth, had no connections.
And it's hard to get in without the recommendations,
it is.
Right?
You really need a congressional recommendation and an appointment, essentially. And I got talked out of it by family members and people close to me. They thought there were better options, right? But it was always something that gnawed on me. And my dad had served, but then he had passed away. So I couldn't sit down with him and say, "What's your advice, Dad?"
Right.
Although I did ask him one time when I was younger about serving, his comment to me, because this was a man who served in North Africa, Sicily. He was at the amphibious assaults of Salerno and Anzio, and he got shot in Anzio. So he was in the European theater.
Yeah.
And he said to me, he goes, "I fought in a world war so that hopefully my kids would not have to," right? So that was the one piece of insight I had from him. But, service is in me and all the things. And so I didn't go West Point. I didn't do any of the service academies. I didn't enlist. I thought I was going to, all right, I'm going to go private sector and, live the American dream and make a bunch of money. And then I started working at a state agency.
You got a job with the state.
Yep. So
the clearest path to all those things.
Exactly. It's like, man, I was not getting good counsel at that point. But I will tell you, working at that state agency was one of the best things that ever could have happened to me. I applied for a job that was way over my skis. I graduated college. No, I hadn't actually. I was still in high school. I was at Chick-fil-A. That's where I was going to get to. I was working at Chick-fil-A. And I remember I'm sitting at the light of Appleyard in Tennessee, and I'm trying to change out of my Chick-fil-A uniform to change into normal people clothes so I didn't smell like a chicken nugget to go to class. And I'm like, there's got to be a better life than this. They're like, there has to be.
Right.
And so I remembered what someone told me about applying to the state agency. So I applied to DEP, again, a job that was way out of my range. But in the interview, they came back and they said, "Listen, we hired a guy in that role who has a degree. You don't have a degree yet, but we really liked your energy, your personality. Would you be interested in an OPS job, so a part-time job answering the phones?" And I was like, "Yes, please."
Yeah.
And so I took that job. Within a matter of weeks, the gentleman who got hired over me, he departed. Some things happened, and he ended up leaving the role. And the bureau chief comes to me and said, "We should have hired you for that job anyway. So do you want it?" And I was like, "Yes, sir."
Wow.
Right? And so then that happened. And then just a series of things started happening like that where, again, I love helping people and I love to learn. And so it didn't matter who was doing what. I would finish my duties and my task, and I was tied to a desk with the phone, and I convinced my leadership to let me buy a phone that has a headset so I could be mobile.
Yeah.
So I could go help people, right? So I had the mobile headset, and so then I would go to people's offices and like, "Can I help you with anything?" And they'd be like, "Sure." And then they'd teach me what they were doing in order to help them. And so I started learning everybody's job. I learned how to do finance reconciliation. I learned how to do P cards. I learned how to do all the things that make an office work.
A what card?
Purchasing card.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, P card.
Okay.
Government lingo there.
Yeah.
But I learned how all of it works. And then like the top floor, the Division of State Lands headquarters, right? The big office on the third floor of the building, and I was on the first floor. They called and they said, "Hey, that kid down there who has the remote headset, like we want to buy those for all of our assistants too. Can he help us set them up?" I said, "Sure." So I went upstairs, started helping everyone set up those phone calls. They liked me upstairs. So like, "We want to hire you up here." So next thing you know, I'd start working for one of the big bureau chiefs up there doing scheduling. And, one thing after the others just started to snowball. And one of my, I'll call them mentors because they became a mentor, looked at me and said, "David, start dressing for the job you want, not the job you have."
Right.
And I appreciated that because at the time I was wearing Abercrombie & Finch muscle polos.
I'm sure they look good.
They look great.
Yeah.
I was very fit, but not the attire you probably want to be wearing to accelerate in your career.
Sure.
And then a very interesting phenomenon happened. So invariably, every Friday evening around 5 o'clock, which we referred to as the witching hour, something would happen, right? Something would break, something would implode. The governor's office would call.
That would keep you from going home.
Oh, my goodness. But I knew that it would happen. So if you can predict it, you can you can avoid it or you can prepare for it, right? So it became predictable. I was like, I know that's going to happen. So on Fridays, I was the only guy wearing my improved wardrobe, which was now Abercrombie and Finch, like outfits, striped button downs and, black pants.
A step up.
I stepped it up, right?
Right.
But on Fridays, I was the only guy dressed like that. Everyone else was like t-shirt and jeans. So guess what happened on Friday at 5 o'clock when the governor's office needed XYZ information and they needed it delivered to the Capitol? They would literally, the
only person dressed
the director would be like, where's that guy who's actually wearing suitable clothes to represent our division to the Capitol? And I became the runner. And sometimes they would struggle to put together the Excel spreadsheets, and I knew Excel because I knew they had a problem. So I got one of the big Excel Bibles. I started studying Excel. So they'd be like, we can't do this. I'm like, here, let me try. And so then I'm sitting at the director's desk as some like low-level staffer doing an Excel formula to fix the spreadsheet, to print it out, to deliver it downtown. So then I got to interface with Governor Bush's cabinet team and all the other cabinet teams. Well, they got to know me. They liked me. I was friendly. I was helpful. And there's a theme here, right? Be kind. That's don't be a doormat. Stand up for who you are and what you believe in, but be kind to people. And so I always tried to be that person. Be coachable. Be a person who listens. And even as I moved into leadership roles, I have tried to maintain be the person who listens. Ask questions and listen. What I have found is a lot of times when you're leading teams from small to big, and I've led some large teams, they don't expect you as the leader to have all the answers. But they do want you as the leader to listen to them when you're their leader, because they want to show that they have value and they want to contribute. So you have an incredible resource around you in the teams that you lead. And I did this from an early age. I would ask questions. One of the most powerful questions I've asked, and this was given to me as a template, use this, David. And I've shared this with a lot of people. I said, here's the most powerful phrase. Help me understand. Help me understand that. Help me understand what you mean. Help me understand, right?
Yep.
Don't say why. Why? It sounds a little bit aggressive or at least assertive.
Sure. A little confrontational.
Yeah. So when you say, help me understand that, help me understand your perspective, it's disarming.
And you put it on you instead of them.
Yes. It means I don't yet get it.
Right.
Or another thing, people will explain something to me and I'll say, can you explain that differently if I don't get it? So be the person who always understands or seeks to understand. So at DEP, I kept on moving up. And I was the senior cabinet aide at, I believe, 22 or 23, which was a pretty high-level role for that age.
That's crazy age. I mean, that's
yes.
Yes, recent college graduate age.
Yes,
so the guy, the OPS guy with the headset, walking around the office solving people's problems, is now a senior aide.
Yeah, senior aide to the secretary and the director of cabinet affairs.
That's crazy.
It was crazy, and the amount of the salary I was making at that age was really good. But there was something inside of me that always yearned for more. And that public service thing kept on coming back up.
So you made a major pivot here, right?
Oh, did I? So I reached out to West Point and I said, what's the criteria? And they said, well, if you're 24 or you're married, it's a no-go. I was married. I had married my high school sweetheart, and so it was a no-go. And so I was like, all right, that's not good. And then I went on this adventure of, well, maybe I want to be a cop. So there was a part of the adventure that took me to go.
You had heard all that shooting growing up, right outside of Fipsy,
public
right?
service is in my heart, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of my friends are law enforcement or military, and said, okay, all right, I'm going to go, do the police thing. And I ended up applying to Charlotte-Mecklenburg PD to move to North Carolina, right?
Was that just a random selection, or did you have a connection there?
I like North Carolina a lot. It's beautiful. Charlotte's beautiful.
Yeah.
And they were hiring.
That's a good combination then.
So I was like, we'll be in the Queen City and I could be a cop and all the climate and all the things.
Sure.
So, but I eventually decided that was not wise because I had a great job in Tallahassee and I could go to the academy here at night at Fipsy, ironically, and become a cop and do that part-time at night and just continue to grow in government, and we'll see where this all goes. So classed up at Pat Thomas, and 2 weeks before I was about to start my classes, my wife sits me down and says, don't waste our time and money and go law enforcement. If you really want to go military, I'll support you. And as God is my witness, the next week, I'm like at the Tallahassee Mall when it's at Chick-fil-A where I used to work and saying hello to my buddies, getting some nuggets. And my friend says, hey, I just want to say goodbye. I'm headed to the Air Force. So I was like, oh, really? What are you doing? He's like, I'm going to become an officer. I'm like, wait, what? I was like, how does that work?
Yeah.
And he talked to me about officer training school. And I was like, there's my answer.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have to go through an academy. There's this OTS thing. And so the very next day, I'm trying to find the Air Force recruiter.
Which is kind of a third option, right? Because you've got, you can enlist,
Yep.
you can go through ROTC in college,
Yep.
or go to officer candidate school.
Yes, if you don't go academy.
Right. Or, academy. That's
Correct. That's
the highest
Yes,
path,
it is. That's
I
the
guess.
pinnacle.
Right.
And I had already missed that opportunity.
Right.
So, and I didn't want to enlist because I had 2 degrees. So I was like, I would want to go in as an officer.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to the recruiting station in Tallahassee Mall. And I don't know if you remember, but on the top level above AMC, all the recruiter offices used to be up there.
Right, yeah.
It was Air Force, Army, I think Marines were up there, all in a row. So I go to the Air Force recruiter. He's not there. Lights are off, doors locked. Okay. Army guys, they're always there, a bunch of knuckle draggers. I say that lovingly because I'm Army.
Right. You can
hint
say
on
that.
the story.
Yeah.
And so they're like, hey, come over and talk to us. I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm Air Force. So I leave. Come back the next week. Lights are off, doors
No
locked.
Air Force.
No Air Force. And I'm like, what is the deal? Army guys, the recruiter's like, hey, come over and talk. And no, I'm good. So, and because my dad was Army.
Right.
And, the stories were interesting. And so I leave again. Third time I come. And you got to remember, I'm in my early 20s. Ego is still strong. Go to see the Air Force recruiter. I'm like, what is the deal with this guy? Does he not care? Like what's the problem?
Right.
Army guys, predictable as always. Like,
They're there.
come and talk to us. You're like, you know what? What could it hurt? I'm going to go talk to the Army guys.
Yeah.
And, they threw the bait. I bit, and they started reeling in. They tried so hard to convince me to enlist. I was like, no, I have 2 degrees. I'm not going to enlist. Like, I'm going to walk out. Like, it's either officer or bust. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up filling out the officer candidate school packet, which was a very robust packet because it had security clearance and all the things. And that's the pathway I took. I was one of only a handful of guys who got accepted on the Eastern Seaboard in that round. So I took that as a sign.
Yeah.
And I was like, off we go. It was 10 months for me to wait until my slot opened up. And so I was training and running and working at DEP, and DEP was so supportive and so wonderful about the whole thing. My DEP family, I still call them that. There's just some of the people are still there. They're incredible people.
Yeah.
I ended up leaving to go to boot camp in October of 2010. I'm going to be honest, boot camp was way easier than I expected.
Mm.
In a way, I was a little disappointed because I had just come from North Florida Christian football where I played with Ernie Sims. Our defensive coach was a West Point guy, so they beat us into champions, and we were state champs.
Yeah.
And I get to boot camp in Missouri in the winter, and it's not even close.
No
to
humidity.
No humidity, but
Right.
they're not really running us. They're not really.
Right.
I'm like, what? This is bizarre. But then my faith was renewed because they bussed us when we graduated to Fort Benning, and we classed up for officer candidate school, and that was 3 months of high octane, 10 hours a day, 6 days a week with a bunch of alpha men and women all competing for your MOS, your branch. And that was awesome. That renewed my faith in the Army. And I was blessed to graduate top of my class. So I graduated as the Distinguished Honor Grad. And then I got to choose my duty choice that I wanted. And so I chose the first deploying 82nd Airborne unit. And I did that because my dad was in the 82nd.
Okay.
I also did that because I was totally unprepared for the question when it was asked of me.
Of where you wanted to go?
Oh, 100%. I had thought about it, but I hadn't really come to a conclusion, and my wife and I hadn't really decided, and we didn't really understand too. So we're sitting at a branch banquet we're all in dress uniform and ladies are big gowns and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I sit next to, and I'll never forget this man's name because he's going to have a section in a book I write one day. His name was Captain Omahundro. He's sitting next to me, and he sees my name placard, and he goes, Clark. He goes, I know that name. He goes, you were the DHG of your class. I said, yes, sir. He goes, where do you want to be assigned? And in that moment, I'm like, uh-oh, I did not prepare for this question.
Yeah.
And so the thing that popped into my mind was my dad.
Yeah.
So I was like, first deploying 82nd Airborne Unit. And he's like, I think I can make that happen, son. And I said, perfect. Here's what I didn't realize. That request was the simplest, most available request. What I didn't also know was I could have chosen Germany. I could have chosen Hawaii. There was a potential Italy in the mix there, and I knew none of that.
But instead you're in Georgia.
Oh my gosh, like an ogre. I was like, I'm going to go to, the 82nd, and that was the first thing that popped into my little brain. And he's like, I can make that happen. And yes, he did make that happen. So off I went to Fort Bragg. And my first duty assignment.
Oh, sorry, that was in North Carolina.
Is in North Carolina.
Right,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. So I ended up going to basic officer leadership school at Fort Jackson, South Carolina.
Okay.
Spent 6 to 8 months there, and then I went to Fort Benning for jump school, and then I went to Fort Bragg.
So how was jumping out of planes?
It's a job. It's a dirty job, but someone's got to do it.
I mean, was it thrilling to you? Was it
at that point in my life? Ooh, this is tough. It's hard to explain. I wasn't doing it because I was thrill seeking. I was doing it because my father did it, and I wanted to walk in his footsteps.
But was the act of jumping out of plane when you were at the door? Was it a rush, or were you scared? Was it just like you said, part of the job, and you were just getting it done?
It's just part of the job.
The next step.
Yeah. So jump school has 3 weeks.
Okay.
Ground week, tower week, and then jump week. And ground week. I kid you not when I say this, they're teaching you how to fall on the ground. So you're at one point you're on these little 3-foot platforms and you're jumping off, falling into a gravel pit. And me being a former football player, thinking I'm invincible, all-American muscle, I could beat the ground. I gotta tell you, Dave, the ground
is tough.
The ground is very tough, and you lose.
Yeah.
And so for the first 3 days, I am battered and bruised, and I'm like, I am not getting this. This is not going well. And there's a system of falling. It's called a PLF, parachute landing fall. And it's where your feet touch first when you land, your knees buckle, and you go to a side. And as you crumple to the ground, like an accordion, it hits like the outside of your calf, your thigh, and then your lat muscle, and you roll, and then you roll over. So it transfers the energy through your whole body. But in order to do it, you have to let go and give way. You can't be like, hey, ground, I'm about to beat you. Right. The ground's going to win every time.
And then you worked at Fort Benning for a while after that?
Fort Bragg.
Oh, sorry. You were at Fort Bragg.
Yeah, Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
Okay.
And I worked at the headquarters unit of 1st Brigade Combat Team, which is 1st of the 504th Parachute Infantry Regiment. And we're called the Red Devils, or the Devil Brigade, which is steeped in history and lore. And I remember the first day I walked through brigade headquarters, I'm walking down the hallway. It was called the Hall of Honor, and it was all the commanders. And I'm talking like McChrystal and Petraeus and men I've read about. I'm like, they were all commanders of this unit. I was like, holy cow. This, and I'm walking through these hallways as an officer in the United States Army. I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. And it just, the enormity of it hit me where I'm so lucky to be a guy with a mom who came from a third world country, to be in a country where I can go and serve as an officer in a line of warriors that included George Washington all the way to Powell and Schwarzkopf, and just an incredible line of soldiers. And it made me grateful, made me very grateful to be able to be walking down that hall and be a part of that lineage.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your service.
Honored I could serve.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. And we'll be right back. How I Got Here is sponsored by Barano Heating and Air Conditioning in Tallahassee. I've been friends with Patrick Barano since we met in a chamber leads group about 15 years ago. I'll admit that I pursued him pretty hard to be his marketing firm and eventually won him over. And the reason I wanted to work with him is that I was already a customer and I knew what kind of company he and his father before him had built. He cares about his customers, he cares about his team, and he cares about this community. I've experienced Barano Heating and Air when they installed a complete system replacement a few years ago, and I enjoy peace of mind and same-day service with my Total Comfort Service Agreement. I've also been behind the scenes at their office and seen firsthand the true character of this company. And that's why we're so proud to represent them. To learn more or to schedule an appointment online anytime, visit baranoac.com. They really always will be there for you. And now back to the show. So how long were you there?
I was in for 4 years.
Okay.
So here's where the story turns not so fun. My goal was to serve my time with the 82nd. I was in conversation with a program called FLEP, Fully Funded Legal Education Program, to go be a JAG officer.
Okay.
So like deploy with the 82nd, come back. You do your first 3 years, and then you get to make a choice, and I would go JAG. But that was not going to be in the cards for me. So 2 weeks before our deployment to Afghanistan, we were geared up. We had everything ready to go. I had a jump that did not go so well for me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I had a parachute malfunction. Long story short, I hit the ground very hard, and the next thing I remember is waking up in the ER.
Oh, wow.
I was being wheeled through the entranceway to Cape Fear Hospital in Fayetteville. And I'd had a pretty good hit on the ground. Once again, the ground got me. I guess that was payback for all the times I was like, I'm going to get you.
You made fun of it or threatened it?
Yeah, oh, man, it got me good.
Yeah.
So I had injured my right shoulder, my right hip, and I had a brain injury.
Oh.
And that was the beginning of the end of my military career, unfortunately. So I continued to work in the brigade for a while, but eventually I went through the process of being honorably medically discharged, which, as you can imagine, was incredibly disappointing.
Yeah.
Because my father served. I graduated top of my class in OCS. I had this whole game plan, and I wanted to retire at 44.
Your plan was a career in the military.
Oh, my goodness, yes.
Yeah.
I wanted to make at least colonel. But that wasn't going to be the pathway. And so, that journey of losing an identity that you had been striving for was hard, was really, really hard. And it was spiritually, emotionally, mentally, physically challenging at all levels.
Yeah, I bet.
And at the time, my wife was pregnant with our first child. So you wrap that all and put it all in the blender, it's a real tough smoothie to drink.
Yeah.
And there were some moments of reflection and some people who came into my life who helped me through that process, because now I had to figure out who was I going to be, because the life I thought I had was taken away.
Yeah.
And there was an inflection point, because I was in a dark place, and because I had a brain injury, and there's a whole story there with what happens to your brain when I had an MTBI, which is a mild traumatic brain injury. So I could still function, but things were not operating the way they should be. Like, for example, I had something called convergence palsy, which is where your brain is not putting the two images of your eyes together. They would split. So like double vision, but on steroids. I was having migraines. Memory was terrible. Sleep was terrible. There was one point I was awake for like 60-something hours. It was awful. I was delirious at one point. And I remember the doctors, when I asked them, because they put me in what's called the TBI pipeline at Fort Bragg, because a lot of guys were getting their head cracked.
Yeah.
A neurologist from UNC, I asked him, I said, when am I going to heal? And he goes, David, we don't know, because we don't understand the brain completely. He said it could be 6 years, 60 years, never. He goes, we just don't know.
Wow.
And he goes, here's the good news. He goes, all your files are still up there. It's almost like someone walked into your filing closet and threw a grenade and blew them everywhere. He goes, now you have to put in the work to reconnect the information by creating new neural synapse pathways. Okay, so that took me on a journey of like, how do I improve? How do I get better? And the military was a part of helping with that. What's interesting out of this is the tactics that the military taught me, like how to speed read, to kind of brute force overcoming any inability to retain knowledge at that point. They taught you like how to structure reading in a way where you could ingest a lot more information faster. Over time, what has occurred is, because your brain does heal, by the way, they have since figured that out. My brain has healed nicely because I have since done scans, and it is almost better than it was before. And now I have better form in basic things where I can ingest, analyze, summarize, and communicate
So now you have a super brain?
It's like it was my Spider-Man moment, right? I got bit. It really sucked.
It was a tough thing to go through.
Yeah. But it's like it was my curse and now my blessing. And
so it's a better use of your brain than you had before.
100%.
Wow.
And there were other aspects to it, but it was a journey that has helped form me into the person I am today. But I will tell you, spiritually and emotionally, it was tough. That was just the physical part and the mental part. But I was sitting at the main hospital at Fort Bragg, and and I'm in uniform. This lady walks up to me. Never seen her before. Never seen her again. She walks up. She says, "Son, I don't know who you are, but God wants you to know that there's a plan for your life. Quite frankly, you don't need to know what the plan is because it might scare the hell out of you. But there's a plan. God bless you." And she walks off. Those exact words, because they're burned into my brain.
Yeah.
And I remember I didn't say a word to her. I was dumbfounded. I'm just like,
okay,
what was that? And then anger came, who the heck do you think you are? You don't know what I'm going through. So I had my little pity party right there.
Right.
But by the end of that morning, it was very much a Jesus take the wheel moment for me. It's like, clearly I am not in control of my life. Even when I think I am and I have a plan, God laughs at my plan.
Sure.
And so it was all right, God, if you're truly the creator of the earth, then I'm going to do the best I can with what I have right in front of me, and the rest is up to you. And so it was, ironically, a let it go again, right?
Which is hard.
So hard.
Yep.
And I'm very much an A-type alpha. I want to control the situation, play the chess game of life, but you begin to realize that your sphere of influence is way smaller than you think it is. And when you begin to let go and take things from that approach, it's amazing how it begins to expand.
Yeah.
And so that was a huge inflection point that ended up bringing me back to Florida. So I was headed to Texas. Actually, I was in conversation with a couple different job opportunities in Austin, Round Rock area.
Okay.
And Governor Scott's executive recruiter reached out to me. I was like, "Hey, we heard you were getting out of the military. Would you be interested in coming back to be the Director of Cabinet Affairs at DEP?" Now, the irony of that is when I left DEP, someone asked, "Would you ever come back and be the director?" And I was like, "No, never." It's funny how you never say never,
sure,
right?
You never know.
Yeah, because I thought, military career, I'll never come back. Here we are, 4 years later, I'm getting offered the Director of Cabinet Affairs. Talk about humble pie. And it was offering half the pay, by the way, that the jobs in Texas were offering. Mm-hmm. But I had a child, families in Tallahassee, and I found that when we were, active duty, we would be burning up I-95 or whatever interstates we would take to get home. We'd go different ways, but we were always on the road to get back to Tallahassee so they could see our son. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to come back to Tallahassee. So I came back to Tallahassee. There's family, there's good people here, a network. So I became the Director of Cabinet Affairs at DEP. Within a matter of months, I then became the Deputy Director of State Lands. Within a matter of months after that, I was appointed to be the Director of State Lands. So 11 years, I went from answering the phones in State Lands as the OPS part-time guy wearing Abercrombie polos.
And looking good.
To being the Director of State Lands.
Wow.
And that role oversees the Florida Forever program and one of the largest state government land buying programs in the country. Mm-hmm. With a huge budget. You oversee state appraisers, surveyors, real estate agents, title. It's a massive, massive job.
Right.
And I was 29. And a lot of the people that had helped guide and coach and mentor me throughout the years, they were still on the team. And now I'm the director.
You're the boss. Yeah.
And I never forgot where I came from. And that was probably one of the funnest parts of my career because I had a team that would run through fire for me because they knew I would do the same for them. Mm-hmm. And we did amazing things. We protected a lot of land. We optimized our portfolio. We did amazing things for the state of Florida. And there are things that I was involved in that left an indelible print on Florida.
So while you're at DEP, then at some point you moved to DMS, right? Management Services.
I did.
Was that just a different challenge, or why'd you make that move?
Yeah, good question. So when Governor DeSantis was elected, I think there was an expectation that David Clark would at some point be in the lineage to be the Secretary DEP, and because I was the Deputy Secretary over Land and Recreation. At the time, we had a secretary, good guy, very smart, knew his stuff, and he was going to be kept by the new administration in that role because he was very effective at that role. And so the new governor, Governor DeSantis' team, the chief of staff, called me, and it was on a Saturday morning, and he's like, David, we're rejecting your resignation. It's like, phew, thank you. Because that's one of the, you got to turn in your resignation when you're in those level positions.
Sure.
And he goes, we love what you're doing at DEP. You can stay there. But we really need help at DMS. DMS is in battle. It's got challenges. The legislature's upset with it, X, Y, and Z. And you got to realize, coming from another state agency, all the state agencies love to hate DMS.
Sure.
Like,
because it runs the logistics for all state agencies.
It is the back end operations.
Right.
And so I asked this chief of staff to the governor a bunch of questions on a Saturday. And I said, because I really liked my job at DEP, I said, I got more questions. I was like, can I come in and talk to you? I think he was a little annoyed by that, but he's like, yeah, can you come in tomorrow?
He just wanted a yes.
He just wanted a yes, because I'm sure I was one of 87 phone calls he had to make on that Saturday morning. And so I came in the next morning, and my interview was with Susie Wiles, who is now chief of staff to the president. And so I sat down with Susie. I talked to Matt Gaetz. I talked to a lot of the players that people now know.
Sure.
Right? So that was the interview team. And I kind of knew some of them, but I got to know many of them well. And Susie, if you don't know Susie, Susie is a very strategic, very convincing person. And I said yes. That's the short answer.
Right.
I said yes to the job. And then a couple days later, they had the inaugural ball. The announcement was made. And so I slid over and I showed up. And
your last move in this phase of your life,
Yes.
from what I can see,
Yes.
is being chief of staff for the First Lady, Casey DeSantis, and then eventually to the governor. Right?
So I know, actually.
Okay.
So I was at DMS. I was supposed to be there for 2 years because they asked me to do a lot with technology in Florida. They actually handed me the reins on technology, like, David, fix it.
Right.
And my team did many things, created the cloud first rule, was deep into cyber, data, enterprise architecture. We did a lot. We absorbed another state agency, the Agency for State Technology. We sucked it into DMS and turned it into what it's now become, the Florida Digital Service.
Mm-hmm.
So 10 months in to my 2-year stint at DMS, I get a phone call. They're like, hey, we want to talk to you about being the governor's deputy chief, because James Blair had moved on, who's now deputy chief to the president. And I said, can you come to the mansion? Can you come to the mansion tomorrow afternoon, so Friday afternoon, to meet with the governor? So, okay. So that Friday, it's 3 p.m., go to the mansion, and I'm walking up to the big black gate to buzz in through FDLE, and the chief of staff calls me. And he's like, hey, just want to give you a heads up. The first lady's going to be in this meeting too. I'm like, okay. And he was like, she's going to want your help as well with some of her initiatives. And at this point, like, my alarm bells are going off. And I'm like, wait a minute. Because she had previously had a chief of staff who had also moved on. And James was the deputy chief who had moved on. So if you see where I'm going, there are two spots.
Two jobs.
And I was going in to talk to the governor about deputy chief, but now the first lady's going to be in the room about her stuff. I was like, okay. And so I asked the chief of staff, I said, am I talking to the governor about deputy or her chief? And he goes, well, both, but we'll talk about it. He's like, see you in a second. I'm like, okay.
Okay.
And so go into the Florida room, which is a sunroom in the mansion. Sit down, governor, first lady walk in. It's the chief of staff and the head of admin for the governor's team. So, it's 5 of us. Had a very great conversation. Actually went really long. It was a little over an hour.
And that was about a year or so you served there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And the pandemic happened during that year.
Right.
So that changed the game significantly. Like we had planned out the next year for the first lady. And then that session is when the pandemic started to break loose. And then we knew about it at the end of December. We were getting more briefings in January, And then by March, we were shutting things down.
Right.
And the stories I've been told I should write a book. Because there were really, I think, 11 of us on the executive team for the governor. I think there was 11 of us that managed the pandemic, and we never stopped working. A lot of people were like, I'm going to the beach. Nope. We were in the governor's office working the whole time. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Right. Because the governor led fearlessly, and, there's a lot of debate on whether we did things the wrong way or the right way. I would tell you I believed in what we did and why we did it, and we had to make sure it was carried out and, try to preserve as much life as possible, preserve the state, the economy, all the things. And it was tough, but the governor
big decisions.
Very big decisions. But he was bold in how he led, and we made it through the other side. And I got to be honest, I was absolutely cooked as an individual. Mm. When you're working sometimes 16, 18-hour days, 7 days a week, it'll get to you. I had 2 kids at home at that point, little ones, two boys, and a wife who was an inspector general at one of the state agencies, so working professional as well. And so it was a very, very hard season. And I ended up at the end of that year, I resigned. And much to the governor's team and the credit, they're like, don't leave. Like, there are agency head positions that are coming available. We'll slide you in over here, over there. I was like, I have to leave. My family's struggling. I am burned out. We're in a lull in the pandemic. Like, I got to go. And so I walked away and jumped into the private sector.
So yeah, so I was going to say, so being burned out, going through an incredibly tough time.
Yes.
Needing maybe to recharge a little bit.
Yes.
So your solution is to start 2 companies.
It was incredibly dumb.
Out of the
oh no, it's worse
right
than that,
from the
Dave.
get-go. Just
it's worse.
Go.
I started 2 companies,
right?
Candidly thinking one might fail, I guess. And I also put in my application for a double MBA at Cornell.
Right. Well, let's talk about those. Allegiant Strategies Group and MyGovGuide.
Yes.
So just give us a quick overview of what those companies are and what they do.
Absolutely. So Allegiant Strategies Group is a strategic consulting and lobby firm. So on the consulting side, we will work with companies to build their go-to-market strategies. We will work with companies to help partner with other private sector entities to build out either their commercial or their government sales arms. Mm-hmm. So as you can imagine, with my background from accounting, business, government, double MBAs, like I am deep in the weeds of how to optimize business. And so I leverage that to help companies. Some of it is solely focused B2B, business to business, right? I don't do a lot of B2C right now. And then it will, and it can turn into B2G, business to government. And in the B2G side, it might just be consulting work where I never even take them into government. But then there are aspects where it's like, okay, now they want to interface with government. I need to register as their lobbyist. I'm going to represent them on the executive side on procurements. I'm going to help them put their procurements together. We're going to draft things, set them up, take them to meetings, all the stuff. And then there's another element where it's legislative lobbying, where it's like, okay, policy, budget, we need to be interfacing with legislators. So there's that piece as well. So it's kind of a multifaceted. There's more to it on the private side in what we're doing, but that's the stuff that's relevant to Tallahassee.
Okay. And then MyGovGuide, what is the role of that company?
Yeah, so MyGovGuide is a business and data intelligence company, and we have an AI custom parsing engine baked into it. Mm-hmm. But essentially what we do is we solve for the problem that it is very hard to understand how government works. It's this big cloud of mystery typically. But government is also very awash with data. There's a lot of data, and the data tells you the story if you know how to read it. And so what we do on a daily basis is we extract through a variety of means about 4.5 million data points out of government on a daily basis through automation. We then pull that together, we aggregate it, we add structure, we add context, we add visuals and analytics, and then we deliver it to subscribers in a single pane of glass. So if you wanted to see right now any state agency where they are from a budget perspective, from a procurement perspective, from a contracts perspective, from a team perspective, from a media perspective, in one single pane of glass, you could see that all. What is their budget as of today, right now? Mm-hmm. Where did they spend their money? What did they spend it on? Who did they spend it with? Who's the leadership team I need to talk to? It's all right there. What you don't know is there's a third company.
Okay.
It's called Divergent Solutions.
I did see that.
Yep. And so Divergent has been around for a while, quietly in the background. And this year, we kind of flipped the light switch on in a bigger way. And we are doing deals with state entities and possibly federal entities.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
That is very cool.
Thank
so
you.
I'm interested in your big picture thought on you've experienced state government at all levels, from OPS to director, chief of staff in the governor's office, or deputy chief in the governor's office, military officer, and in the logistics and inner workings of high-level military operations.
Yes.
And then now as an entrepreneur running businesses. Is there anything that has surprised you about the differences in those? Are they surprisingly similar? What are your thoughts on leadership in really different areas of working environments?
Great questions. And I would tell you there are similarities across all of them because at the end of the day, humans are involved. And, the humans are spectacularly the same, regardless of where you are, even globally.
Right.
But the problems that you're trying to solve are unique, and that creates the diversity of experience. So I'll say this: leadership matters. No matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, leadership matters. There are two things, other than religion, that will change the world and are changing the world: leadership and technology. So if you notice where I position myself is at the confluence of those two things, leadership and technology. I'm heavily involved in technology. I'm an investor in tech companies. I'm an investor in AI companies. I'm an investor in humanoid robotics companies. I've angel funded a few things. So I'm behind the curtain as an investor. I'm an entrepreneur with I've gone down the rabbit hole on AI. I'm into crypto, and I'm big on leadership. I try to teach people as much as I can on leadership. So I will tell you my purpose in life. I've been very open about my Christianity. I'm a believer. My purpose is to glorify God, right? It's a broad statement. There's a lot of plans in order to achieve that purpose to glorify God.
But it's a lens through which you look through everything.
100%.
Right.
100%. And it allows me to focus in and ignore some distractions that in order to glorify God, it really goes back to the people and helping people through their situations, through their circumstances, and revealing to them the best in themselves and the growth potential that they have, right? And I tell people when they're hunting for something, I'm like, you are enough. It's already within you. You just got to dig deep, surround yourself with the right people. And I said this the other day in front of a ton of people on stage. I said, no one's coming to save you. It's like, take accountability for your own life through action. I said, people will offer help and assistance and guidance, but at the end of the day, no one's coming to save you. But I think leaders out there can lead the way from the front by example and help people to see what it could look like for pathways of hope, right?
Yeah.
And I shared with you I lost my dad at 18. I got injured in the military at 25, and some people say I could have lost my life in that incident. So it really makes you understand the fragility of life. And so I believe I've been given, a second chance, and I'm not going to waste it. And I'm going to use it to help others, because rising tides raise all ships. And I have been blessed in my life. I've worked hard for it, but I have truly been blessed, and it's all God, not me. And so I feel a responsibility to use those blessings, whether it's my time, my talent, my resources, to give that back to others and to raise up the people around me and then the next generation who is coming behind me, because they're going to have this all one day.
Right.
And I have a 13-year-old son and I have an 8-year-old son, and I feel a tremendous responsibility to raise up warrior men who are kind and who will contribute to society and not detract from it. But at the end of the day, I have to know in my own heart that when it's time for me to proverbially hand the baton off to them, that I did everything I could when it was my time to set the example.
Yeah.
And so that's my perspective on it.
That's awesome. Two final questions.
Yes.
First, David, looking back, we've talked about a lot of things, but if you had to say one thing or person that really changed the trajectory of your life to this point, who or what would that be?
I would tell you my parents, for very different reasons, mom and dad. Dad, because of who he was and how he raised me. just the chivalry, the honor, the integrity, your word is your bond. It was very World War II generation, right? The greatest generation. That's how I was raised. I was raised by a man from the greatest generation. So I have found that I think and operate a little differently than a lot of my peers. They call me the old soul, like I mentioned, and I attribute that to my father. Now, on my mother's side, she is a very feisty 4'9" woman who has a hand of steel. And when I say she impressed upon us, the Bible and education, she did it with a rod. And I'm now grateful for that because she definitely didn't spare the rod, but she instilled in my sister and I hard work and drive and the value of education and the value of being open to others. And so while at times it was a painful lesson, I wouldn't be where I am and who I am if it wasn't for my mother and what she instilled in me in work ethic and drive. And so those two people, just core foundational, are incredibly important.
All right, final question. The podcast is called How I Got Here. So we've talked about how you got to this point in your life. Where do you think here might be for you in 3 to 5 years from now?
I am in the phase of growing, buying, building, and selling companies. And I will continue to be in that phase through that timeline. There's some military things that might be involved that I won't bring up right now, but perhaps come back and share more when it's announced. There are some growth and business opportunities I'm involved in. And just for fun, I was filmed in a movie last week.
Oh, really?
Yeah, talking role, played an FBI
Like a real
agent.
movie?
Like a real movie.
Wow.
It's a armored car heist action movie, and I played the lead FBI agent. So, yeah, we're going to see where that's going to go.
Yeah.
But I still, heart of service, right?
Yeah.
So 3 to 5 years, there's a growth plan. I have strategists in my life. I'm very blessed to have incredible people who have done and grown things, and I'm working on building out some game plans with my companies, with my life, with my brand. And so there's a lot of exciting things that are going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years. And, it's a whole nother story for another day, but I'm currently single, unfortunately. It was not the way I wanted things to go out in my life, but I'm currently single. And I'd like to think in 3 to 5 years, I'm at least seriously involved with somebody. So, because I miss being married. It was incredible to have a partner in life. So,
well, I think God has shown you that He will give you what you need when you need it. Right?
100%.
Yeah.
And He's not yet. That's the message I've received. Not yet. And so I'm working on my relationship with God, my relationship with my sons, and candidly, my relationship with myself, and just growing businesses and helping people. And I'm having a blast. I am so blessed. I'm having fun. I'm doing things, going places, and every day is just a new box of opportunities and excitement. And I'm just having a good time. Life's good.
Thanks for listening to the show. You can subscribe at Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, please leave us a review. It really does make a difference. Thanks to my amazing staff at Fiore Communications, who pick up the slack while I'm working on these podcasts, and to Troy Bloom for composing our theme music. You can hear more of Troy's creations on Facebook and Instagram at Troy Bloom Music. To connect with the podcast or suggest a future guest, follow us on social media or email us at podcast@fiorecommunications.com.